As a mentor, I would say the role very much is to support the student in really to secure their understanding of what's needed from them through the apprenticeship itself. To some degree, to make sure that their off-the-job records get in on time, and then have sort of professional discussions about where they're going to go and where all of that's going to come from. And then, if needed, to offer them support within the learning role, because depending on which path they've taken, whether it be a level 3 or a level 4, they may need some assistance, and to an extent to check on their well-being, really, to make sure it's not overwhelming them too much, because I think it can be quite a challenge when you're doing these apprenticeships. Where do I start? At the age of 17, joined the Royal Air Force. I trained to be an aviational firefighter. I then sort of like completely turned around on itself and went to work for the commercial or private sector. I went to work for Chubb, started at the bottom of the ladder. I was an extinguisher engineer, then I became a hose reel specialist, then I became a trainer. So I trained Chubb's customers in the use of their fire equipment, and I trained their engineers to British approval standards. From there on in, I kind of drifted into health and safety for a while, and I taught NEBOSH both nationally and internationally, and then came back. I joined Xact. I instantly was told I needed to do a level 4 diploma to match my European diploma. So I've done the courses the students do, which I think is kind of useful because I've been there. I know the work that needs to be put into it, I suppose. And I guess I'd like to think that I can bring a fairly rounded approach to fire learning within my experiences. On the tutor side of the role, we're all individuals, we're all different, we all learn in different ways. And you tend to spot the question, well, you know the questions that are going to give people an issue. Having done the courses yourself as well, and sort of like knowing where the pitfalls can be. I think there are several big benefits. I would argue there's more work involved for the apprentices because obviously they have a lot to do. They've got off-the-job training records to do, they need to go out on site visits. But in realism, to me, that gives them a competence. They're going to gain the knowledge, the abilities, the training and the experience, as opposed to, dare I say, just getting a qualification. You know, the thing I try and enhance them when they're thinking, crikey, I've got so much work to do and I'm struggling to hit this deadline and one thing and another. I'll say, yeah, but what you've got to remember is that at the end of your apprenticeship, I says, you will be classed as competent, not just qualified. You're gaining all of the experience over that. It might only be 18 months if you're doing a level 3, but certainly if you're doing a level 4 dip, it's a little bit longer. But you're gaining all the experience that goes with it rather than getting a qualification, which is great, but then going into a field which possibly you've never actually experienced. We've got to talk to them, try and encourage them. Talk to them about their off-the-job training, what exactly was involved with it, because initially all we see is a spreadsheet and it'll say they went to a visit or they shadowed something or whatever. So we can talk about sort of the questions they asked, what they learned from it, all of those things. You know, trying to encourage them to get a little bit more involved, maybe attend fire safety meetings. You know, don't take a back seat. You don't have to necessarily speak up, but you're like a sponge, aren't you? Your brain's absorbing information all the time you're there. We do get notified when they've passed courses or if more information's been required, which is kind of good as well, because from there on in, we can have a look and have a chat about what we need to brush up on. It's certainly not very easy if you get more information required. You feel like it's a bit of a 3x2 across the back of the head. When you have the conversation, they actually know the answer. Because it's all well and good having the information, knowing where to go within a guidance document, and then sort of reading it and trying to put it into your own words. But you need to truly understand why it works that way. You know, I mean, one of the first things we learn in fire safety is, you know, the first golden rule is, can I turn my back on the fire? And sometimes people don't get that into their heads as an idea. And you say, you just stop for a moment and say, can I turn and walk away from it? Do I have two means of escape? You know, because if I do, all of a sudden things become a lot more easy. And, you know, it's just how you put that idea into a head, and it's how you think about it, and you pigeonhole things, I guess. It can be a little bit difficult at times because as meeting 1 runs to meeting 6 and meeting 7, and you get to know people, you're very tempted to probably give more help than you should. We've got to be professional about what we do. What we've got to try and do is just direct them to the guidance, or as close to the guidance as we can get. And if you've got any problems, come back to me. And if they're still struggling, then we might arrange with, obviously, we'll talk to the apprenticeship team, but we might arrange for a bit of a one-to-one session, just for half an hour, just to run through something. Because it's an apprenticeship, what we sometimes find, of course, is that they struggle to get into the niche, get into what they need to do, and it takes a little bit of a while for that to actually work itself out. So that can be a bit of a challenge too. Sometimes for a variety of reasons, people will struggle with certain aspects, and it's sometimes getting them to open up to you. Initially, if they seem to be struggling, the whole idea is we take the conversation as to what's going on. Sometimes it's not academic. Sometimes there might be things going on at home, and there's all sorts of things that happen within our lives as they take their turns and their twists. But we need to sort of just have that open dialogue, and once we've done that, we can then sort of move forward as to how we put it right. More often than not, once we've got that open conversation and that trust, I suppose it's about trust, we can again have a bit of a chat, and we can arrange, if we need to, a bit of time to have a meeting, or we can run through the question or questions that maybe they struggle with or didn't quite get, and hopefully we can achieve what we wanted to, and we can sort of we can meet where that problem's coming from and resolve it. And that's what we try and do at any rate. I had one apprentice who seemed to be struggling through most of his sessions, and he wouldn't really open up. And when he did eventually open up, I realised his workload at work was immense. And I said, well, look, let's arrange a Zoom call, a bit of a chat. We'll talk about the next unit. And needless to say, he sailed through that. He had a big smile on his face. And that's what makes you feel good, I guess, as a mentor, because you think, I finally got him to come round. He's realised now that I am actually there to assist, not to make life more difficult. And he can actually utilise me as a resource. I mean, I initially found it a bit of a challenge being a mentor. It wasn't something I'd done before. I've never worked with apprentices before. One of the lovely things about this industry is you do build bridges, and you do make friends that I would like to think would be there forever. Because you're taking somebody through a journey. It starts at the beginning, which is almost like a baptism of fire. I mean, you couldn't get any worse, could you, than starting day one and having a full day on legislation, And I think once most people have got through that initial hurdle, then things start to progress. And it's lovely when you get to, I mean, even on level 3, when you get to that third course, and then people sort of everything's starting to slot into place, a bit like a jigsaw. Because, one thing people will say, they'll say, well, it's just not sinking in, I can't remember. So you don't need to remember it all. You just need to know where you find it. I said, the time will come where you'll walk into a building and you'll say, yeah, this building needs an L3 system. It should have emergency lighting and 3, blah, blah. And I said, you'll just rhyme it off your head, because you'll just walk around the building. You won't even need to look at a manual. I said, but that comes with time, that comes with time and experience, which is one of those things the apprentices will get. Because the apprentices are doing that, they're going out, they're walking into those environments. I think that's a big help in cementing the learning, if you like, with the practical side of it. But it's been quite an interesting journey, and hopefully we're not losing too many along the way, and hopefully everyone's going to achieve their goals, and ultimately that's what it's about.